Hello, my dear children. Namaste and welcome to session 1 of our chapter 2 for class 10 ICSE, which is genetics. Yes, let's get started. And this is Ambika, your biology master teacher, right here on this amazing platform of Vedantu. Now, you know what, children, to get started, let me tell you this. Genetics is one chapter that most of my students in my last 7+ years of teaching experience, most of my students have been telling me that this is the hardest chapter for them if it's there in the syllabus. But then, trust me, you will get to know within the next 2 or 3 sessions that we are going to be doing here that this is actually the simplest for you to score marks. So you must in my opinion, you must consider yourself blessed to have a chapter like this in your syllabus because it's easily going to fetch you at least 5 marks for your class 10 ICSE board exams. And personally for me, it's always been my personal favorite chapter. All you need is a little bit of extra efforts in understanding the basic concepts, which we will be covering in this session and the next session. And then sessions 3 and 4, which normally everyone considers the hardest parts of the chapter, are going to be just super easy for you all. Okay, so stay with me and let's get started. As always, here is a positive quote for you. This is what I have to tell you today. You are only captive by walls created with your hands and choices. So let's not imagine any boundaries at all. Let's not imagine any possible limitations to what we are capable of doing, because ultimately, if our intentions are true and pure, it will definitely come out to the world. Okay, let's move ahead. And today we are going to be learning about these. What are they? What is genetics? Variations and inheritance, mutation, sex determination, and I'm going to be telling you some of the important terminology which we use commonly in genetics. So, is it a very basic thing, and does it mean that you can skip this session? Definitely not. It forms the base for your understanding of the upcoming session and the session that's going to be coming after that as well. So stay with me and here we get started. Look at this. Family members, we know, quite often resemble each other, yet they are different. What do you think is the science behind this? Well, although I have shown you the picture of the Simpsons cartoon, which I think is a very cute one to represent this concept, think about it in your own perspective. Think about how much you resemble your parents, or how different you look from your parents, or how similar or different you look, you and your siblings look from each other. You and your cousins perhaps resemble each other more than you resemble your own siblings. Why does all this happen? How does all this happen? Yes, it is a pure science, and it is the science that we call genetics. There are a few basic set of rules that determine what you're going to look like and how different or similar you're going to look like each other. Okay, so with that, let's move ahead. What is gene and genetics? Gene is the functional unit of inheritance, and the study of inheritance is what we term as genetics. Okay, so what is gene? If you look at this picture, you would know it's a double helical structure of DNA, the double helical DNA model which is there. The gene is a segment of DNA, basically, simply put. Now, what is DNA in the first place? In case you're not thorough with those concepts, I would strongly suggest go back to your class 9 and have a quick recap of all those concepts. Or you can also watch the videos that I have done for the chapter cell cycle and cell division, wherein we have discussed this well in detail. Okay, what is DNA, what is chromatin, what is chromosome, and so on. Okay, so this is it. A chromosome or chromatin biochemically is made up of DNA and histones, if you can recall, and one segment of DNA is what we call a gene. So one DNA molecule which is here is made up of many different segments, which means it's made up of many different genes, and the genes are what determine our features, our characteristics. Okay, and the study is what we call genetics. Now, how is it that something that's there inside your nucleus, something as tiny as the gene, is able to determine what you look like, or is able to determine your characteristics? This is the science behind it. Children, this is just there for your extra bit of information. In case you find it hard to understand this, what's written on this slide, do not worry too much about it. But in case you're interested in knowing that, please do have a look at it and listen to what I have to tell you in the next couple of minutes. Now, genes, although they are found inside your nucleus, it goes through a lot of transformation. It goes through a lot of modification and a lot of changes through a couple of processes which we call transcription and translation. Okay, these are concepts that you will be doing a lot in detail in your class 11 and 12. So not to worry, for the time being, just understand that through a set of complex processes, through a sequence of complex processes, DNA gets converted to proteins. And why are proteins important? Most enzymes in our body which help in making the most of our metabolic reaction rates faster and help in most of our reactions in the body. They are biological catalysts, basically. They are proteinaceous in nature, a lot of them. Okay, this is why we say proteins are important, and the amount of a particular protein would decide whether or not you're expressing one particular character fully, partially, or you don't express it at all, regardless of whether or not you have inherited those genes. Okay, can sound a little confusing, I know, but not to worry. I'm sure by the end of the next 3-4 sessions, you will be much clearer and you will find this much more easier to understand. Okay, so for now, just understand DNA gets transcribed and then it gets translated to what we call proteins, and they are what decide our characteristics. But then where is the base coming from? It's coming from the DNA or from your genes, right? Now, the entire set of DNA is copied when a new cell is formed. We have discussed all about mitosis and meiosis in chapter 1. So I hope you guys are very clear about that by now. What happens through interphase? You know, the S phase happens wherein DNA replication occurs, wherein the entire set of DNA replicates itself, right, as a preparatory step to form a new cell or a new daughter cell. Okay, now sometimes when this copying of genetic information, when DNA gets replicated, it doesn't happen perfectly, or there is some kind of imperfection that may arise when this genetic information is copied during DNA replication. This is what we call mutation. For instance, if you actually recall what we have discussed, remember I have told you all about the nucleotide, the purine and pyrimidine combinations, A, T, G, C, right? This is how ideally nucleotides would pair up at the time of DNA replication. But in case it doesn't happen normally, sometimes it happens that A may by mistake end up pairing with G, or it may pair up with C or something like that. When that happens, we call it mutation, a random mistake, a random error that can occur in your genetic material, be it at the gene level, as I have shown you, at the nucleotide level, which is within a gene, or it can be for an entire segment of genes or for a group of genes together, or for the number of chromosomes also, which means basically I'm trying to tell you mutation can occur either at a point level or a genetic level, or it can occur in terms of the number of chromosomes also, which means we call it at the chromosomal level as well. Okay, but whatever it is, when imperfections in DNA copying do occur, we call it mutation. Mutations can be either somatic mutations or germline mutations. Now, somatic mutations are those which occur in your non-reproductive tissues, which means if it's not in your non-reproductive tissues, they are usually not inherited. It just happens in your body and it just goes off with your generation. It vanishes. But then, in case it occurs in your egg or sperm, that particular mutation, it can get inherited by your offspring, which means it can which means this is exactly why we say cancer and many other diseases can be inherited, right? Mutations, we know, are capable of causing diseases like cancer. If it's occurring in your reproductive tissues, it means it can be inherited by the offspring. So these are examples of somatic mutation, and these are examples of germline mutations, okay, which occur in your reproductive tissue. And all of this, regardless of what type of mutation they are, we say that they cause variations. Okay, now let's try and understand the significance of mutation and variation. Why does it even happen? Well, partially, or I would say most of the time, variation is a very important process because, as I told you, mutation does create variation. Most of the time, unfavorable mutations are selected against. As in, if you go by the principle of natural selection, which Darwin proposed, which you will be learning in detail in the chapter Evolution, what is the mutations which do not help a particular organism adjust to its surroundings or the environment wouldn't continue further, which means they are selected against, they just vanish. But then, through reproduction, favorable mutations, which means those mutations which do help an organism survive and get adapted to the changes in the environment, get selected. Right? So, favorable mutations are more likely to survive and they continue with every generation, which means I think to give you a better context, because you haven't learned the chapter Evolution, I will just tell you a small story here. Lamarck was actually the first person to come up with one of the most popular theories of evolution, wherein he gave the example of the giraffe. It's said that giraffes initially, when they were formed millions of years ago, they are said to have been short-necked animals, unlike the present-day giraffes. So short-necked giraffes, just like goat, sheep, and cow, they went about grazing and feeding upon plants which were like at ground level, and so on. Eventually, what happened was that there came a point of time where food was no longer available at the ground surface or ground level. So what did they do? Giraffes, which couldn't find any other alternative, they just ended up dying of starvation. But some giraffes were a little smarter, and they went about trying to stretch their necks to reach leaves which were on taller trees. They kept doing that, and for the next thousands of years, it is said that this slight stretching in the neck of giraffes kept on accumulating, and this accumulation, step by step, got happening for over millions of years, and we see the present day giraffes, which are very, very long necked. Right. So it is said that it is the favorable mutations, this continuous stretching of neck, led to a condition where there came about a mutation in the DNA of those giraffes, and that mutation, because it was favorable for the giraffe, it kept on getting inherited by the offspring, and that is how today we know that only long-necked giraffes survive. Those giraffes that did not inherit the favorable mutation ended up dying of starvation, unfortunately. This is why we say variation is important, because it is a raw material for natural selection and hence evolution. If not for variation, imagine every organism that survives on this planet today would look exactly like carbon copies of each other. We would all perhaps have been just unicellular organisms, like the first form of life that was formed on the planet. Right? So variation is important. Yes, formation of new characters. Right? As I have told you, that is what has led to biodiversity. Helps in adaptation to environmental change, as I have told you about the giraffe's character, the long-necked giraffe. And yes, it also provides individuality to an organism. Although all of us, you and I, belong to the species Homo sapiens, we are still a lot different from each other. Why so? It's because of variation that exists. Right? Okay. Now, children, before we move ahead, let me list out a few problems that most of you face in online education these days. I understand that many of you have been coming up to us and saying that you have a lot of unanswered doubts because you don't get to meet your teacher in person on a daily basis. Maybe you don't have access to systematic notes. Proper like tests and assignments are not happening, unlike normal school days. Competitive exam preparation is becoming even more of a challenge. Choice of schedule, choice of language, all of that is a problem. But then the good news is that we have all these problems solved for you right here at Vedantu. And in addition to these, we have a lot of bonuses for you. What are they? Unlimited live classes, all micro and crash courses, performance reports, personalized attention, and so on. Now, children, for those of you who don't know what micro courses are, crash courses perhaps most of you would know. crash course is something that we do at the end of an academic year or just before a particular term ends as a quick recap of everything that's there in your syllabus. But then we have something called micro courses, which many of our children prefer taking up because you may not need help with all of your subjects, or even in a particular subject, you may not need help with all of your chapters. So micro courses are designed specially for you at a concept level or at a chapter level. A micro course can be taken up in case you want extra help only for a particular concept or only for a particular chapter, that too with your favorite teachers at Vedantu. Okay, so just wanted to introduce you to that. So to know more about this, all you have to do is visit vdnt.in/ytpro. And let me just quickly guide you through the steps so that you don't get confused when you visit the link. You get to choose your grade. So for most of you, I guess it's going to be grade 10, because this is, I'm assuming that it's only class 10 students who are listening to me right now. But if you belong to any other grade, go ahead and choose that. Next comes a selection of your target, which means CBSE 2021 or ICSE 2021 or Maharashtra Board 2021, whatever you belong to. Okay, 2021 because you're targeting that particular March 2021's board exams. Now, next comes checking out all the details. I think I have told you most of them, but in addition to that, what is included in these courses, which we call Vedantu Pro, all the best features have been listed out for you. You can just go through that and click on the button Get Subscription. Now comes the big question about pricing. So here we have all the details for you in case you're confused about whether or not to even visit that link. So the 1 month pro subscription normally costs, without any discounts or without any offers, would normally cost you 2,699 for 1 full month. Okay, which means for that 1 full month you have unlimited access to all of these features that I've told you. But then we have an offer that's happening right now, which is application of the coupon code AMBPRO, application of which is going to reduce your amount payable to 2,294.15. Okay, AMBPRO. Now comes 3 months. For 3 full months, if you want unlimited access to all of these, the amount payable would be 6,999. Whereas application of the same coupon code AMBPRO would reduce it to 5,949.15. Okay. And then comes for 6 months. So I personally think now, because we are in the month of September, 6 months of subscription would actually relieve you from a lot of tension because your exams are going to be happening in the month of March, which is roughly 6 months away from now. So for the next 6 months, you don't have to worry at all about having unlimited access to all of these features, unlimited live classes, test series, assignments and notes, and a lot more. So normally the amount payable would be 11,499 for 6 months subscription. But again, through the offer, the same coupon code AMBPRO is going to reduce it to 9,774.15. So it's completely up to you guys. Using this, the data that I have told you, this is for 6 months, and I've told you likewise for 3 months and 1 month also. Just sit and work out how much it's going to cost you per session. Okay, trust me, this is going to be a very reasonably priced course which you must make use of. So think about it, do the math. I leave it totally up to you. Think about what features you want, what is pocket friendly for you, what is budget friendly for you. We are always here for your support. Okay, so with that, let us move ahead and have a quick check. Yes, basic unit of inheritance, previously known as factor, is chromosome, gene, DNA, cell. And your time is up. The answer is gene. In fact, factor, the word factor was used by Mendel, who is known as the father of genetics, to refer to the word gene and allele. Okay, we will get to know about all of those terms in the next session, so don't worry too much. But then just understand that the father of genetics himself, around the time he was carrying out his experiments, the terms gene, DNA, chromosome, all of that hadn't been coined yet. So he went about using the term factor. Now, dash is a raw material for evolution and natural selection. inheritance, variation, binary fission, budding. Yes? And your time is up. The answer is variation. Yes, children, variation is the raw material for evolution and natural selection, most certainly. Okay, now the branch of science which deals with heredity is evolution, molecular biology, cell biology, or genetics. Super duper easy, I'm sure. And your time is up. The answer is the name of this chapter, which is genetics. Now, differences that exist between individuals of a species are called dash. Evolution, mutation, variation, features. Differences that exist between individuals of a species. Think about the differences between me and you. What do you call it as? Would you call it evolution? Would you call it mutation? Is it features or is it variation? And the answer is variation. And well done, guys, whoever has got the answers right. Rest of you, don't worry at all. I'm going to be giving you a lot more interesting bits of information, after which we are going to be having one more quiz time. Okay, so get ready. Children, human beings have two major types of chromosomes. Human beings or any sexually reproducing organism for that matter, which we call autosomes and sex chromosomes. Okay, so autosomes are those chromosomes which do not determine the gender, or which do not determine whether you're a male or female, whereas sex chromosomes, as the name indicates, are those chromosomes which determine whether you're male or female. Now what you see here is the set of chromosomes of a human male cell. Why am I telling you it's a male cell? Because the sex chromosomes you can see is comprised of one X chromosome and one Y chromosome. What about the rest of them? We have 23 pairs of chromosomes in each of our diploid cells. We've learned this in chapter 1, and we've perhaps learned it in grade 9 also. And I've told you that we represent them in pairs. That's why we call it 23 pairs of chromosomes rather than saying 46 chromosomes. Literally because each of our chromosomes is in a paired condition in our diploid cells or in our somatic cells. So look at that. You have the first pair of chromosomes, second pair of chromosomes, third pair of chromosomes, and so on till the 22nd pair of chromosomes. You find it like normal. It's common to every human being, regardless of whether you're male or female. But the last pair, or the 23rd pair of chromosomes, is what we call sex chromosomes, which is made up of two X chromosomes in the case of a female, and one X and one Y chromosome in the case of a male. Okay, so this is one important difference all of us must understand. I'm telling you with respect to a diploid human cell. Okay, 22 pairs of autosomes and one pair of sex chromosomes. Okay, very, very, very important to understand this. And now, with that understanding, let's talk about sex determination in humans. Yes, we know that in the Indian culture especially, what decides whether a baby is going to be male or female? Like, people generally have these superstitious beliefs that if the mother eats a certain kind of food, the baby will become a girl, or if she eats a different type of food, the baby will become a boy, and so on during her pregnancy. And there are a lot of other interesting tales that most of us would be able to relate to. But then, you know what? The truth is, the sex of a baby is determined a lot before we actually start talking about all these food items. It is determined at the time of fertilization. What is fertilization? The fusion of the egg and sperm is what we call fertilization. What is the result of fertilization? It is the zygote. So, as you can see here, the egg cell, look at this. This is the mother, this is the father. And as I told you, an egg cell, because the mother would always contain only two X chromosomes as her 23rd pair, when gametes are formed, or when her eggs are formed, obviously these would split apart from each other and enter into different gamete cells, right? So one single egg cell would contain only one X chromosome. Okay, always an egg cell would contain only one X chromosome, whereas the difference comes in the case of the sperm, because as I told you earlier, men have an X chromosome and a Y chromosome in their diploid cells, which means at the time of gamete formation, imagine this is the diploid cell which is destined to become the gamete cell through meiosis. At the time of meiosis, when sperms are formed, these would split up and enter into different gametes, which means in one ejaculation, a male is said to produce 1,000,000 sperms. In that million sperms, roughly 1,000,000 sperms, in that millions of sperms, half of it is said to be sperms which carry an X chromosome. Okay, the remaining half are said to be sperms which carry a Y chromosome. But on the contrary, as I told you, an egg cell or the ovum always carries only an X chromosome. Okay, so there we go. This I think has already given you the hint. At the time of fertilization, an egg doesn't move. We know that. We've learned it in reproduction and concepts like that in lower grades. The sperm which manages to fertilize the egg through that race between the millions of sperms I told you, the sperm which manages to fertilize the egg or meets the egg first, if it carries an X chromosome, it results in a baby girl. On the contrary, if the sperm that manages to meet the egg first in that race, if it carries a Y chromosome, it results in a baby boy. So, what are we trying to say? We are trying to say that the sex of a baby is decided by the type of sperm that fertilizes it. Basically, it is the father who decides, or not physically in his control, of course, it's purely a matter of chance. But then, which type of gamete the father contributes to fertilization is what decides whether the baby is going to be a girl or a boy. So, continuing and summarizing whatever I have told you until now, here we go. This is a Punnett square, basically what we call a Punnett square, in which I have represented the possible types of combination between a sperm and an ovum. The sperms, as we know, the chromosomal components of a sperm, or the chromosomal constitution of every sperm would either be 22 autosomes plus an X chromosome, or 22 autosomes plus a Y chromosome. Remember, they are not paired in gametes. Okay, and in an ovum, on the contrary, it's always going to be 22 plus X. Okay, so there we go. Look at the possible combinations between them. 22 plus X ovum and a 22 plus X sperm is going to fetch you a result of 44 plus XX chromosomes, which makes a daughter zygote. And this combination would fetch 44 plus XY, which is going to fetch you a male zygote. Okay, so same thing. Likewise here also, it's the same thing. Basically, what we're trying to say is it's a 50-50 probability. Okay, 50-50 ratio. Okay, now we go on to discussing some very important terms which are used in genetics. Children, this is perhaps one of the most important things you need to understand to ensure that session 2 and 3 are going to be very easy for you to understand. Now, gene. What is a gene? I have told you that, right? At the start of today's session, I have told you inside your nucleus, you have the chromosomes, and biochemically, chromosomes are made up of DNA. Segments of DNA are what we call genes. Okay? So there we go. This is what gene is, and we say it is the basic unit of heredity. Now comes allele. Where do you find alleles? There is a term that we use saying alleles. Now remember, children, I have been telling you about homologous chromosomes. I told you chromosomes are always paired. In the image I showed you some time back also, I showed you in a diploid cell, chromosomes are always paired. Imagine this is the chromosomal pair 1. In this chromosomal pair 1, I get one member from my mother and the other member from my father. Okay, from my mother, one member of my mother's first chromosome and one member of my father's first chromosome come together and form my first pair of chromosomes. They are together forming one homologous pair because they are structurally looking alike. They carry copies of genes for the same characters. Okay, so what I'm saying is alleles are copies of genes or versions of genes. I get one copy of a gene or one allele from my father, and I get another allele or another copy of the same gene from my mother, but only one of them is mostly expressed. Okay, you will understand more about this as we go further into Mendelian genetics, but for now understand alleles are found on members of homologous chromosomes. Okay, children? Now, moving ahead, talking about the concept of dominance and recessiveness. Now, talking about dominance, there are some alleles which are always expressed, regardless of whatever the condition may be. I told you it is an AA example that I showed you earlier. So sometimes it happens that this allele, okay, it gets expressed, while this one, small a, what I'm representing as small a, does not get expressed. The allele which does get expressed in any condition is what we call the dominant allele. The other allele which doesn't always get expressed, because in the presence of a dominant allele, sometimes this allele, which you see represented as the small letter here, may not get expressed. We call that a recessive allele. Okay, so a dominant allele and a recessive allele. In this example that you see here, it's the example of eye color. Okay, so eye color is the character we are talking about, and the different traits under eye color. Eye colors may be either brown eye color, blue eye color, green eye color, black eye color, and so on. So we say eye color is the character we are talking about, whereas blue, brown, black, green, or whatever are the different traits or the different versions of the character eye color. Okay, traits are more specific while characters are more general. Okay, and here, if you look at it at the genetic level, one parent probably, in this particular example, you can see both the parents are, what you see here is of parent 2, and this is from parent 1. You can see that parent 1 and parent 2 are both brown-eyed. Okay, imagine brown-eyed parents, but genetically, if you look at their genetic combination, you see that both of them have one allele for brown eye color and one allele for blue eye color. Okay, both the parents, parent 1 and parent 2, both of them. And look at the possible combinations of them as I have expressed here: capital B, capital B, capital B, small b, a capital B, small b again, and the small b, which means there is 25% probability, or 1 out of 4 chances, that their offspring can also be blue-eyed. Which means we sometimes wonder, right? How can a blue-eyed child be born to 2 brown-eyed parents? This is the result. Okay, this is the effect of dominance and recessiveness. So here we find a combination of 2 recessive alleles, which is resulting in a blue eye trait. Whereas, look at the other 3. What are they? In this case, you see capital B, only 2 dominant alleles. Definitely, it's going to express only the dominant trait, which is brown. But in these 2 cases also, you see the brown eye color trait, despite the fact that only 1 brown eye allele is present, and the other allele which is present along with it is a blue eye color allele. So, despite this condition, only the brown one is expressed. The blue one's effect is masked. This is why we call the blue one here as a recessive allele and the brown one here a dominant allele. So basically, here in this example, you can see that when there is at least 1 dominant allele present, yes, it will be expressed. Physically, it will be expressed. Whereas, for a recessive allele to be expressed, it has to be present in a similar pair, or it has to be present along with a similar pair. Okay, there are more terms that we have to understand, which is coming up, which is homozygous and heterozygous. I have told you capital B, capital B, small b, and a small b, 3 different conditions I have told you of allelic combinations. when both the alleles forming a pair are similar to each other, like the capital B and the small b, we call it a homozygous condition, because homo means similar. Whereas, look at this case, capital B, small b is a heterozygous condition. Hetero is different. Okay, so what I'm saying is, now let me tell you this in a combination of this and the previous slide that I have shown you. A dominant allele can express itself in both homozygous and heterozygous conditions, by which I say both of these would result in a dominant expression, whereas the recessive one gets expressed only in a homozygous condition. Okay, that is the basic gist of homozygous and heterozygous and about dominance and recessiveness. Now, why have I shown you it in chromosomes? It is because I told you, you find alleles on the homologous chromosomes, members of a homologous pair of chromosomes. Now coming to phenotype and genotype. What is it? Nothing complex at all. Genotype is what I have been telling you until now. Capital B, capital B, capital B, small b, and the small b, small b. These are examples of genotype. Whereas when I say both of these physically are seen as brown eyes and this is seen as blue eyes, I'm talking about the phenotype. What we physically see is what phenotype is. The physical expression of a gene is what we call a phenotype, whereas the genetic makeup is what we call genotype. Because when you look at me externally, you can make out only my phenotype. You can only see that I am black-eyed. Genotypically, whether I am homozygous or heterozygous, you don't know and I don't know either, right? We would be able to determine it only by examining my family history, based on whether my parents are both brown eyes or black-eyed, whether their parents are both black-eyed or brown-eyed, and so on. So physically, externally, what you see is the phenotype, but inside the genes, what alleles we carry is what we call the genotype. Like you see in this image also, the genotype you see of the mouse's fur color or the coat color. But phenotypically, you see that it's a grayish brown colored phenotype or a color. Okay. Now, I think terms like monohybrid cross and dihybrid cross, also I will just introduce you to them because it's coming up in the next session. So, monohybrid cross is those refers to those types of genetic experiments wherein only one character is studied at a time. For instance, we are studying a plant, the inheritance of characters in a plant. Say, for instance, out of all the characters that a plant has, we are focusing only on flower color. We are looking at only the results and combinations of flower color in our genetic experiments. This is a monohybrid cross. Likewise, a dihybrid cross is an experiment wherein two pairs of contrasting characters are studied at a time. For instance, in this case, you see seed color and seed shape. Seed color can either be yellow or green. Seed shape can either be round or wrinkled. We are studying how both of these characters or how the contrasting traits of both of these characters are inherited at a time. Together, we are studying the inheritance patterns of them, and we call it a dihybrid cross. Okay. So here we summarize all the terms and their meanings that we have discussed. What a gene is, I have told you already. What an allele is, what phenotype is, genotype is, monohybrid cross, and yes, dihybrid cross also. Homozygous condition, heterozygous condition, what a trait is. Trait is a version of a character. So pretty much, I think if you think about it, traits are versions of characters while alleles are versions of genes. Do keep that in mind. It's a very, very, very important basic thing to know. And I don't think most biology teachers teach that kind of a difference. So it's important for you to understand, children. You can't use them synonymously. Trait is a version of a character, allele is a version of a gene. Okay, and yes, then coming to a dihybrid cross, as I have told you, pure breeding. is a character that has been unchanged even after many generations. You will understand the meaning of pure breed better as in when we dive more into Mendelian inheritance. Dominant trait and recessive trait also, we have seen what it means. Now coming to the next part, which is the quick check. Let's see how much of this you have understood. The condition in which both the alleles are identical. Homozygous, heterozygous, mutation, variation. Okay, and your time is up. The answer is homozygous, wherein the example of capital P or a small b, this is homozygous. Heterozygous would mean this. Okay, alleles of a gene are found on dash. Homologous chromosomes, sister chromatids, different chromosomes, either B or C. Okay, again your time is up. And the answer is homologous chromosomes. Yes. Now, a dominant trait can be expressed in homozygous condition, heterozygous condition, both A and B, absence of alleles 2. Dominant trait. Okay, and your time is up. The answer is both A and B, which means I said a capital B, and a capital B, small b. This is a homozygous condition. This is a heterozygous condition. But physically, both of them are expressing the brown eye colors. Yes? Okay. Now, great job, guys, if you have got all the answers correct. In case you haven't, not to worry at all, children. Let me tell you, the very first time I studied this chapter also, it was very, very difficult for me. Too many new things and new concepts coming in front of my eyes and like dancing in front of me. Genes, alleles, chromosome, everything seemed to be dancing in front of my eyes. But trust me, as and when I made it a point to read more about genetics and work out more logical problems on genetics, things became much clearer to me, and that is how till date genetics is one favorite, or rather the most favorite chapter, or the most interesting chapter that I find in the entire syllabus of biology in any grade. Okay, now you know what genetics is, what are variations and mutations, what is variations and inheritance, what is mutation, how sex determination in human beings occurs, and all those important terms or the terminology commonly used in genetics. So that's about it, children. But then do remember to visit vdnt.in/ytpro and the coupon code AMBPRO, which can be applied to avail the best offers that we have right now in Vedantu Pro subscription. So children, homework question before you leave. Genes are to characters as alleles are to dash. Think about it. I think I have told you the answer already while I was explaining this. Genes are to characters just like alleles are to dash. Okay? So alleles are versions of genes, and something else is a version of character. That would be the answer. Okay, so think about it and let's see who's giving me the answer first. If you have enjoyed the session, please do remember to hit the like button right now. Share it with all your friends who you think would benefit from this. And in case you have not subscribed to our channel, hit the subscribe button right now so that you get all the updates which come up on this channel, Vedantu 9th and 10th English, and of course the bell icon right next to it, so that you keep getting notifications. Thank you very much, children, and until we meet again in yet another interesting session, this is Ambika signing off. Bye-bye.